Hey guys, my name is JC Dean, and today I want to share with you one weird trick to help you lose all your body fat in the next 6 days, guaranteed. I'm just kidding, that was horrible. I'm not that guy. Stick with me, I got a lot of cool stuff to share. Hey, so a few days ago I made a video about 3 common mistakes that people make when it comes to their fat loss journeys, and it may have come to a little surprise that they weren't necessarily the most common or maybe the problems that most people think about. Today I want to give you an idea about my journey and how I got into the fitness space and the struggles I dealt with during my transformation from just a young kid that was kind of obsessed about his weight and his body fat levels and being chunkier than all the other kids in school, up until now, being a coach and doing this for a living. So the first thing we'll go into is the so-called former fat boy syndrome, FFB for short. Now, what's cool is I wrote some articles on this 2 or 3 years ago talking about my journey growing up as a fat kid. And what's cool is Men's Health actually interviewed me about this, and they say that I coined the term former fat boy syndrome. So that's kind of neat. But I want to make this as quick and snappy as short as possible, so here it is in a nutshell. Growing up, as young as I can remember, being 7, 8, 9 years old, I was always really chunky. Pretty fat at one point, and I was always really self-conscious about it. I even remember one time being so young and asking my mom if I could go on a diet, which sounds crazy when you're 8 or 9 years old, but that's the way it is. That's just where I was. I remember trying, just trying to watch what I eat and trying to eat stuff that was healthier, canned tuna and stuff like that, and it was awful and I hated it. Thankfully, I forgot all about dieting and everything. What's cool is that I actually got into athletics when I was, I guess, 8 or 9. I started playing basketball at the local school. I was slow. I was much chubbier than all the other kids, and I didn't let that defeat me because I really fell in love with athletics. So going up through school, up through like junior high and high school, I became an athlete, and that was pretty much my saving grace in terms of helping me get slimmer and more fit. But even in high school, especially with playing football, that was my favorite sport, and I actually loved the strength and conditioning aspect of it way more than actually playing the sport. But I always envied some of my peers because I was usually much stronger than them, but they had better looking physiques than I did. I remember one kid who had an amazing row of abs, pretty muscular. We were like 15 or 16, and the kid had to win on, I don't know what he's doing now, but he could probably win natural bodybuilding shows. He had really great genetics, and that's something I'll get on here in a second. So going through high school, I was always envious of people with great physiques. Caught myself reading bodybuilding magazines over the summers when I would be training, and becoming obsessed, mainly with the physique athletes, not necessarily the big bodybuilders. So yeah, up until high school, up until it ended, I never really had the physique that I wanted. I was never super proud of my body and the way I looked. I was really strong, and I could always outlift most people. Basically, I found that the strength didn't equate to the aesthetics that I wanted. Once high school was over, I was no longer playing sports, got into college, and what was really cool about when I got into college is there was a big group of guys that I became friends with, and every winter they did this thing called Best Body Competition. For me, I had never seen my abs in my life. Just keep in mind I was like 19 at this point. Have always wanted to, and here was a friendly competition with 14 or 15 guys. At the end of the competition, which is like mid-December, we got together, had a panel of judges that were all friends of ours, and they judged our physiques. What was great about it was, even though we were all competing against each other, we supported each other. We were all friends. We hung out, we drank together, we ate together, we spent time on the weekends at each other's places, and it was just a good experience altogether. I think in the period of 12 to 16 weeks, keep in mind I'm completely just pulling from my vague memory from so long ago, I probably lost like 25 pounds, something like that. So at the leanest I was down to about 155 pounds. Leanest I've ever been, never seen my full row abs before. Ended up getting second place in the contest. I won like $300, so that was awesome for a college student, and that whole experience was my first transformative episode of my life. So basically, all this time I had been wanting this physique, and I got this physique, and I had a ton of admiration. Everybody was like completely amazed that I made this transformation. So, and it was your typical, like, I was training 4 or 5 times, maybe even 6 times a week. Some weeks I was doing cardio every single day. Didn't know how to count a calorie for my life. Had no idea what that meant. I was just simply eating 5 or 6 times a day, trying to stick with the quote-unquote clean foods. And somehow it worked. I guess just tons of exercise and eating foods that weren't necessarily super calorie dense, just focusing on protein mostly. And I didn't actually skimp on carbs, which is an interesting thing that I've learned later on. Is definitely not the way to go. But before I really knew anything, it seemed to work. So that was my very first experience with transformation. Had a huge support group. All those guys were all really good friends. We worked out together. It was amazing. Having that accountability and that support was everything. And I probably wouldn't have experienced that if I didn't have the friendly support and encouragement. So let's fast forward a little bit to a year or so after that. I actually hired my very first fitness/physique coach. Never had a coach outside of athletics before, so this was a very first for me. Now, what had happened after I experienced that transformation, I started noticing bad patterns and bad programming. So I was pretty addicted to cardio. I was obsessed with staying super lean, and it got to the point to where I became much weaker than I was whenever I was at the peak of my transformation. And all of it revolved around just an unhealthy relationship with food and the way that I viewed exercise. It was horrible. So I knew at that point it was time I had to get some help, and I actually hired a coach who's now a very good friend of mine. His name is Lawrence Hosanna, and I probably owe my career to the fact that I listened to him. And what's funny is, as a coach myself, I see so many people getting so worked up about all the can't even speak. All the intricacies, the complexities of diet and training and trying to make something so complex when it needs to be very simple. And when he sent me my plan, I looked at it and I was like, Lawrence, is this really going to work? And he was like, just trust me. I've been doing this a long time. Put your faith in me. I won't steer you wrong. Long story short, I go through 12 or 16 weeks of getting out of this bad mindset that I had about food and exercise and cardio, and completely just redoing my whole view on everything when it comes to fitness. He helped me gain like 15 pounds. I got really strong, stronger than I've ever been, even back in my high school lifting days. I got really strong and put on some size, and then I made the goal that I wanted to do a photo shoot the next summer. So I scheduled that photo shoot with a friend of a friend who was a photographer, and I told Lawrence, I was like, okay, I need to be in the best shape possible for summer. And I put everything in his hands again. He coached me again, and lo and behold, I came out really lean, really happy with my physique, and did my first ever photo shoot. My first ever experience with any type of modeling, and one of the photos actually ended up getting in a local publication. But anyway, the cool thing about that was I learned the value in the objectivity that a coach could provide. And even to this day, I still have a coach. I just got back from the gym doing a program that is pretty foreign to me, and it's very heavy on volume and very heavy on conditioning, which is something that I haven't done in a while. But it's really refreshing, and I'm already learning things just from letting someone else take the wheel, so to speak. Okay, so I originally told you about my experience as a former fat boy, having my first transformation, that community that I was involved with, how important they were. Then I explained to you a little bit about having a coach and why a coach helped me shape my own views, and even to this day I still have a coach to keep me in check. But now I kind of want to talk about something that I think we all struggle with. I know it's not just me, because a lot of my clients and a lot of people that I've coached over the years and all the articles that I've written and the responses that I've gotten, a lot of it comes back to the idea that we feel our genetics are inferior. Now, I can attest 100% to this. I was a fat kid growing up, and seeing all my peers being lean or skinny, whatever you want to say, I didn't have the skinny kid gene. It wasn't natural for me just to be lean and muscular. I really had to work on these things. And to this day, I still have to work really hard to maintain the physique. Now, it's not to say that I'm completely busting my ass every single day. There's a huge difference. I mean, I've gotten to a certain point to where I've got it down, I understand what needs to happen, and for the most part, I can maintain the physique year-round. And it wasn't always that way. So you might ask me what's changed. And most of that has to do with just experience and tons of failures and figuring out what worked for me and what didn't. In the past, I used to operate under all these ideas that I needed to eat a certain way or I needed to train a certain way, and if everything wasn't absolutely perfect, then nothing mattered. Now, fortunately, I've grown way apart from that, and now I see everything as just trying to mesh everything together and trying to make sense of everything. And you know what? If you can't be perfect all the time, you can't be 100% consistent all the time. It's not the end of the world. The most important thing is that you begin and continue. My encouragement to you, especially if you feel like there is one thing that will throw the rest of your week off, or if you miss a training session, it completely wrecks your month or your week or whatever you're trying to do, let go of that, because it's not about the one individual thing that you do. It's about the series of things that you do over time. One training session that was sloppy, or one training session that didn't even happen, or the burger you ate out last night because you had too many drinks, that doesn't completely sabotage your goals and your focus. What completely sabotages that is when you let that one slip up, or that one thing completely obliterate the rest of your diet or the rest of your training. When you let that completely derail you, that's where you screw up. And that's where I screwed up so many times. I'm saying this because I'm not perfect. I am just like probably a lot of you watching this that are in your journey and you're trying to find the Holy Grail. I'm here to tell you that there is no true Holy Grail. There are amazing ways to go about your diet and training, and there are really crappy ways. There are fad diets, and there's stuff that leaves you hungry, wishing you had certain foods, training that leaves you just absolutely spent without being able to see much progress. And there's the opposite end of the spectrum, where you make progress every time you go to the gym, or if you're not truly making progress in the sense of adding weight or adding reps, you are changing the intensity, or you're extending your workouts for time. Anyway, I'm rambling at this point. There's a ton of different things you can do. What it all comes down to is just your mindset and understanding that there's no one perfect way to do it. You are not perfect, and you just have to stay consistent. It's what I mentioned in the first video. You think you can go it alone, so you pick a diet and a program and you get started and you go really hard, and then you fail, and then you have nothing to fall back on. You can't do it by yourself. The other thing is just being really consistent. You know, if you're not consistent at least 80 to 90% of the time, doesn't matter what you do, it's not going to work. And the other major thing is understanding that your ultimate reward is not the end goal. The ultimate reward is understanding that the process is what you need to fall in love with. And once you fall in love with that process, achieving those results, maintaining those results becomes fairly easy over time. So in saying that, thanks for listening to my story. I hope you're able to relate to me more than before, and hopefully you don't see me as just some coach writing online speaking at you. I want to have a chat with you. I did mention a couple days ago that we do have a fat loss group coaching starting at the end of March. If you resonate with anything I said here, I would love to have you be a part. There is an opt-in box below. Make sure you click that link, submit your email. I'll shoot you a personal email to give you all the details very shortly, and we can have a conversation. Thanks so much for listening to my story, and I'll see you soon.